The Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our Week 8 in review. I am back in the United States in North America. My co-host Robert never left North America. Robert, good to see you again. And a very eventful week that we just had in Week 8. Some couple of really big games that were fun. We didn't have plays on those. As usual, our plays were more closer to the edges of the sport, but another fun week.
Yeah, it was a really good week. There was a lot of really good games. We're now fully into the swing of having weekday games, which is great. I've really been enjoying that. And yeah, some big games, some big results that have big impacts. There's not really much else to say about that. A lot of predictions people have had based off of the first couple of weeks. Some of those are seemingly on life support now, but some of the maybe earlier season predictions, they're maybe coming back a bit. So it's very interesting how we're seeing the ebb and flow of this season, and I think this is we're far from done here.
We are. If you are new, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're getting more and more views each week, except for last week when I was overseas and our schedule was thrown off. But we appreciate it. And if you're a regular, we very much appreciate you returning to us. If you're new, you might want to just do a screenshot of this glossary. It's the metrics that we refer to throughout this podcast. Take a screenshot, save it into whatever you do your college football work in, and refer to it throughout this episode and the rest of the year. With that, we will go to who won week 8. I will start. I was bullish-ish. Boy, is that a word? More or less bullish. I had Indiana over 5.5 wins. I limped into that. Could have gotten 6 in some places, but I was a little skeptical. But man, Indiana they really upped the whole discussion here with that just absolute drubbing of Nebraska. Did not imagine that during the season, before the season, that we would be saying, hey, Indiana should probably just tap the brakes against Nebraska and take it easy on them with both the backup quarterback in there nonetheless. Boy, we've talked about Signetti, so I don't want to just tread that ground again, but this is just there. I know you've got something on this a little later in this episode here, but they're a serious threat to make the playoffs now.
They really are. And without talking too much about the playoff implications and the Big Ten implications, I'll talk a bit more just about Indiana, the team. And again, what an absolutely insane thing. First of all, love that picture. It's pretty simple. I win, Google me. I love that. That's a great quote. And just like the look on his face, just so stern. Yeah, we know this. We got this. And what an insane story, right? We were bullish on Indiana coming into the season. We're like, they're going to be a good-ish team, but they're probably not going to be able to beat the top tier of the Big Ten. They're not going to be able. This is going to be like almost that Penn State last year tier. They're going to be like a 2-loss tier. They're not going to. They're not. But not only are they now 7-0, only 5 wins away, and a lot of those remaining 5 games are very winnable. But this team does not trip up. This team just dominates. Like this was a good chance of not being 56-7. Okay, they were 7-point favorites in this game, or 6.5. Sorry, they dominated from start to finish, absolutely dominating this game. It was, I think at one point Nebraska did tie it, but again, this Indiana team doesn't just win, they win massively. They just absolutely dominate teams. UCLA, the spread was 3. They won, I think, by 30. Again, here they won by 49 when the spread was 6.5. They're not just beating teams, they are absolutely destroying them in all phases throughout the entire game, and they're not letting up. And we were high on this team, and we had good reason to not be. This is the best team in the Big Ten. And to be fair, I don't think they're not the best team in the Big Ten. I don't think that. Probably not. We can't say for sure. But Indiana had been in such a deficit of quarterbacks and of just talent. That talent just did not exist. And now we're at a point where it's just like, no, actually, they're just amazing. They're 7-0. If you had said that the pieces that were in that Indiana team last year, which again, it is a lot of the backbone, some of it's from the JMU team. But if you're like, yeah, this backbone, it's gonna go 7-0 to start next year. And they're also gonna destroy Nebraska. They'd be like, no, there's no way. Like, oh, did we beat Nebraska by a last second field goal? Be like, no, you beat them 56-7. Did Jeff Sims transfer back to Nebraska? This is what. How did this even happen? And if you were saying to someone last year that this was what could be the score in this game, they'd be like, no, there's no way. But here we are, and it's just crazy how good this Indiana team is, and just out of nowhere. And this is year one. This is year one. This guy got here. He brought in some of his pieces. He brought in some of this stuff. What's year two? What's year three? What happens when he actually gets Big Ten recruiting money and Big Ten NIL money and says, yeah, okay, we're going to start competing for the top guys? This is even with top guys. This is with the people he had at JMU, an FCS school from 2 years ago, and Indiana, arguably one of the worst. Actually, it is actually in Big Ten history, one of the worst teams in Big Ten history. And wow, it's absolutely insane where how far we've come in just a few short in just a few short weeks.
Yeah, not to pee on the parade here, but I think realistically, I think year three means he's at a big SEC job. If next year is anything close to this, I just think that's the reality and the gravitational pull of that conference.
What I will say though is it's probable, but at a certain point you may not want that, right? The thing is, I get maybe the allure to it, but I think we're heading to a point in college football where this is going to start looking, and if not a year from now, but 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, I think we're going to be moving to a lot more of an NFL model where if you're in one of the top teams, you're
Mm-hmm.
just you're in the league. It doesn't matter if you're in Indiana or Florida. If you're in the Big Ten or SEC, you're good.
I would think it's just easier to recruit to Gainesville or just places south of the Mason Dixon line than to Bloomington, Indiana. No offense to the fine people of Bloomington. I just think that winters there can make it a little tough to recruit kids from the south, which is where most of the talent is.
True, that's fair. But
Yeah. So
I don't. We'll see. I don't think that it's just going to be like, oh, okay, we're gone, right? Indiana gets a lot of money from their Big Ten contract.
yeah, they
It's not
get.
they have room to open up those purse strings. There's room. Could they outcompete, say, Ohio State? No. Or some of the other teams, say a Florida or an Alabama or a Georgia or a Texas, even. And again, I'm just throwing out big name schools there, not to say that they're openly getting a new coach, but could they outcompete them? No, but they could definitely outcompete. Say, if it's like, hey, we get this guy, we win every game, then yeah, you're outcompeting Maryland, you're outcompeting Purdue. You'll just pay the cash, right? You're not. There's a lot of ones you can easily beat there.
All right. You're week one. Geez, week eight winner.
Yeah, I think you got to give this to Tennessee here. This is just the picture here, the final game-ending interception where Tennessee intercepted Milrow. Tennessee, what a weird couple of weeks here, right? Looked like one of the best teams in college football after they destroyed Oklahoma. They beat them by a relatively okay margin, but it was a defensive game. Then they lost to Arkansas. Then they had to take Florida to overtime, which apparently looks better by the day, weirdly. And then all of a sudden they just destroy Alabama, handing them their second loss. It's an absolute crazy turn of events for this Tennessee team. And people were like, oh, okay, Tennessee lost to Arkansas. They got to still play Alabama and Georgia. But now all that's basically left on that schedule is Georgia. Florida is actually looking like one of the tougher, compared to the future schedule, actually one of the tougher teams they'd have to play. So even if they lose to Georgia, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of that in a second, but in later on segment, we're teasing that segment. But the thing is, if you only lose to Georgia, you're still very in that playoff picture. Like you're very much into that playoff picture. And yeah, so shout out to Tennessee bringing themselves right back into this and maybe eliminating Bama. I don't know. It's a little iffy. It's a possibility that this might be it for Bama.
There's just, and this is why I love the new format. There's so much more football to be played, and it's, again, at this point now we would be talking about the stupidity about, oh, what's a loss at Arkansas
Compared to
worth versus,
Vanderbilt.
versus a loss at Alabama, and just this is so much better because it to a degree it'll sort itself out. There'll be some unhappy fans, I'm sure, but you know what? If you're in that last spot, like when we're talking about March Madness, if you couldn't get into that last play-in game in the 12 seed, that's on you. That's not on the committee. The committee might have screwed up, but you had plenty of opportunities because you probably lost about 10 games in the season. You know what?
Yes.
Lose one less. The new format is just so superior. We've talked about that before, so it makes just an awesome season. All right, not awesome. My week 8 loser. This, I figured
Love the
out one thing I'll
picture.
stumble
Love the
into in a
picture.
second. Oklahoma this season, I had two concerns. Arnold was a bit unknown at quarterback. A little bit of a rebuild on the offensive line, but the biggest concerns for me were the schedule, which was and still is brutal. Um, And also Seth Luttrell at offensive coordinator. So I missed the first quarter of this, and when I first turned in, it was this 21-0. And I first thought, geez, the defense just didn't show up. But imagine that you outgain your opponent by 35 yards and you lose 30, what was it? 35-9 was the final score. What a disaster. Okay, you give up an early touchdown on defense, fine, whatever. But then back to back turnovers for a touchdown. South Carolina, I've just said for years that they just don't have any identity. And I think their identity is just every year they would just blow one of my under bets with a game like this where they have like multiple scores that are not on the offense. That's the one thing they'll do. They'll just stick it in me once a year just for good points. Not pictured here also. So the final score was 35-9 after this crazy first half. By the way, which was the worst home showing in the first half in Oklahoma in 27 years, according to reports. It really settled down in the second half. It really settled down. And I was under 41.5, and it was on 41. And it was actually, there was a chance it had settled down that it was actually going to go under. And not pictured in the second half is Oklahoma fumbles again, like on their own 20. Just lose with dignity, as my boy Hamblin would say. Just lose with dignity. But nope, they had to fumble the 20-yard line. South Carolina goes like no yards, gets a gimme field goal to go over. The offense is just beyond a concern. But hey, congratulations, Oklahoma. You got somebody that can coach defense now. I know that's what you wanted when you lost Lincoln Riley. We're not done with Lincoln Riley by any means either. But for
No,
this one, this was just horrible.
no, and it was funny because that was actually one of the things we pointed out, right? Because we're like, oh, Texas. We said this in the SEC preview, right? Because Texas, Oklahoma coming in, we said, hey, with Texas, watch out because they had been taking advantage of kind of the weaker teams. So don't worry, we're getting to Texas in just a few minutes here. But we had said, oh, it's going to be hard because there's no, oh, okay, we play a bunch of bad teams and we can play down to the competition. You have to still keep playing good teams every week. And you actually pointed out in the one slide that Oklahoma actually, like Texas' schedule in terms of strength of
Yeah,
schedule was actually about the same. It was Oklahoma that was going to get buried. And I was
yeah,
like, yeah, okay, but they were okay last year. But no, like we're seeing just that level of getting buried. Like they're absolutely getting buried in these games, right? That was horrible loss to Tennessee, horrible loss to Texas, now another horrible loss to South Carolina. And you know what? Yeah, all right, the back-to-back defensive scores, yeah, that's not fun. That happens. That's not really, that's a fumble return and interception return for touchdowns, not great. And you know what? You never expect that to happen. That's not like, oh, okay, that was our failure. Usually something random happens in those outcomes. But no touchdown in this game. No touchdown against Texas either. That's back-to-back weeks, no touchdowns. Field goals, great. It's not how you win football games, though. At least I don't think there was 2 field goals or a touchdown in this game. But like again, sorry, let's clarify that. 2 weeks of less than 10 points against
yeah,
SEC teams. That is really bad. That is a huge problem. That means that, and again, they struggled massively on offense. I think they changed quarterbacks midway through this game as well. That did nothing. This is like the Michigan situation, but actually worse in some cases. Michigan can score points sometimes, but yeah, it's their defense isn't good enough to support this poor of an offense. And okay, maybe this could turn around in the offseason. Maybe you can start recruiting stuff, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on the coach here and potentially a change in Oklahoma. I don't think there will be after this season. I think they're probably going to wait another season. But this is the job that's going to start next season on the hot seat, and this is going to be like, oh, okay, you lost Red River, okay, oh, you lost the next week, okay, you're gone. That's where
yeah.
this is. That seems like that's where this is going to head next year.
I think Venables got extended before this season too, so that's probably going to be a factor in this as well. All right, you're week 8 loser. No surprise here.
Yeah, no, this was it was a small upset actually. It's really fun because I actually had a preseason bet on Georgia in this game -3.5, and I was a little worried, but they just decided to cover that, and it wasn't even particularly close. Georgia just completely mauled them on defense this entire game. Texas got nothing going. Their rushing in this game was very poor. They were completely reliant on the pass, but they could only really complete short passes. I think again midway through they pulled Ewers through Archie Manning in. He didn't do that much better, got them a couple points, but again, the damage had already been done at that point. And this is what we've said about Texas, right? And again, Georgia is the toughest team they've played so far this year, and because they played the only other team they've played so far that was any good was Oklahoma, a team that we just saw got destroyed by South Carolina. Texas's strength of schedule is not great at this point. I don't think that the teams they're beating up on are like necessarily that good of teams. They've played three SEC teams. They're 2-1, and the best team that they've played against, they got beaten pretty badly. And the two teams that they have are, I don't even know if yeah, no, Mississippi State doesn't have an SEC win, and I don't even know if Oklahoma has an SEC win. So this is not particularly good. And the thing that we had said about Texas was if they can't run the ball, they're in trouble. And sure enough, they're down a couple of running backs again, and they could just, I think it's down to Jatavian Wicks now, and they got nothing going on the running game. And then they had to rely on Ewers to pass. And that's when this all starts falling apart, right? Everything is designed around that. And their defense was pretty good, only holding to Georgia 36 points. That's fine. That's actually pretty, yeah, 36, I think, or something like that. That's pretty good. That's not horrible, but you need to put up more points on offense, though. That's the thing. The problem is if they can't run the ball effectively, their entire game plan just falls apart instantly. And you can't have that. And look, this is what we said before about Texas, right? Oh, okay. When they are back in the Big 12, it's, oh, who are we playing now? Oh, a 2-win team. No, you're playing Vanderbilt, a team that's already upset Alabama and upset, they beat
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. Yeah. So now we're going up against a team that's upset. I think they're going to Vanderbilt as well, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I think Vanderbilt's at home.
Yeah.
So what could possibly go wrong there? This is the thing, right? It's like you're potentially in rough here, and where this people thought this Texas team was going to be so dominant and like the best team this year. Okay, yeah, obviously it's one loss, and they're definitely not eliminated from this yet. But you have some good teams coming up. You've got Vanderbilt. You now have Florida coming up as well. You've got some tough games before the end of this year, and if you lose two more of those, then you're probably out of this. So I think Texas. This was Texas's first test, and they definitely failed it. And I think there's more upcoming tests.
And on that topic, Robert, you know who also failed the test that he actually didn't even have to take? He just threw himself in front of the test. My guy Stu Mandel, once again. I don't know if you remember when Ewers was hurt against UTS. They brought in Arch Manning, and I thought this was such a dumb thing for him to say, and I was just waiting for it. So after Arch Manning lit up UTSA, here's Stu Mandel saying, "Hey, if I was Texas, I'd feel good going against anybody with Arch Manning as my quarterback." Because we all know, Robert, there's no better test of how good a quarterback is than basically beating up on a team that just lost 49-10 to Texas State the week before. I mean, that basically just says how good a guy's going to be in the SEC for sure. So, noted Big Ten expert, now SEC quarterback expert, Stu Mandel again checking in with just awesome analysis. You can't make it up. This guy's just so spot on. He
Yeah.
just
The thing is, okay, it was a bit late. 3 for 6 for 19. That's not great. You definitely want to see more yardage there. 50% completion. But again, look at those Quinn Ewers numbers, though. 211 yards on 43 passing attempts. This was a guy who was people thought could win the Heisman. This is people like, oh, going to be first round draft pick, NFL. Not good. Not good.
Yeah, and the last thing about Texas is I'm not going to judge a team off their worst performance. I think this is a good team. I still have them. If you look at part two, when we get there, I still have them ranked number one in my power ratings. But here's what my concern is: an egg in a big spot is not something unique. I'll just put it that way. And not to make this a whole national title thing right now, this is his ability just to do that, or his proclivity maybe to do that, really is a concern about Texas winning the national title. And that's what the season is so interesting is every team's got one major concern like that. I think if you just eliminate everything, the one thing where you and I probably differ is my metrics don't have Oregon as exceptional. They have them like as good on offense and defense, but just not as elite on either side of the ball, really. And it just the process of elimination just takes me back to Ohio State. I'm just not thrilled about them. And I don't know. I think if we ask Isaiah what he thinks about Ryan Day's ability to navigate the playoffs to a title, I'm sure he'd have a skeptical take. It's interesting, and even though it seems a little grim, to preview part two a little bit, there's a team that you and I are just higher on than everybody else, not named Indiana, that is just getting no pub at all in the national title race. So stay tuned to that. But I think that This thing is so wide open. This is what I love about the new format too, because what was the thing that so many idiots were saying 5 years ago? We know the four teams are going to make the playoff anyway, so who cares? It's going to be from like this group of 5 or 6 teams. And now it's what a big unknown, and we're not waiting for something stupid to happen, somebody to lose a dumb game. This postseason is going to be something special. Um,
I think this is the ultimate kind of end game of the NIL because now we've had NIL for a few years now. And I think the end game of it is that it balances off the teams
yep, yep,
because, okay, yes, there is no official salary cap, but there is only so much money boosters are going to give to teams, which kind of creates like, there's not a hard, but it's okay, we're not giving you we're not giving you like $100 million each. We're giving you something, and that's that. I think because of that, I think you basically had a couple schools that were paying players under the table, and basically it was like, oh, you're paying me, and it's oh, okay, I'm gonna go to you because I think I can win the national championship here, get in the NFL, and get money, so I'm gonna go here. But now that it's like, you know what, I can get in the NFL pretty much anywhere, and I can also earn money. Now it creates it where, hey, you know what? We can go everywhere. And I don't even think it's necessarily that now every team is just better. It's just that those top teams, you're no longer, oh, this team's entire offensive line is going to the NFL, right? Now it's, oh, now only you only have 2 or 3 pieces on this team that are going to go into the NFL, and we all have that now. So it's not, oh, this team has 8 first round draft picks. And you can still have that, but I think that basically you're diluting the talent across functionally every team because
yep,
some players are going to prioritize better coaching and winning a championship game, and some are just going to say, "Pay me, I just want money." And that's not negative about them because again, a lot of these students, because they are students, they're coming from poor backgrounds. So they're like, yeah, I need money. I need to support my family. I want that. And I completely understand that. That's not a negative connotation here. But it's like when suddenly people prioritize different things, you can get this kind of dilution of the talent pool. And I think in
yep.
that cases, the better coaches rise, which is what we're seeing. And that basically any given Sunday, any of these teams can win. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, the other thing too is just the unlimited transfers without having to sit out. Also, a lot of the depth that would have just stayed at Georgia like 3 or 4 years ago is just not there, and just you lose 1 or 2 guys, and you're a lot more vulnerable than you would have been in
Yeah.
past seasons.
Because you normally it's, oh, this guy's going to be our starting quarterback in 3 years, and he's just going to sit there,
Yep.
and that's it. But
Yeah,
now it's, I
walk
can
out
go
the window.
start somewhere else, right? Oh, that guy
Yeah,
was going to be our starting center in 2 years. He decided I can go be a starting center at a Big Ten school, so I'm going to go do that, right? That's the thing. So there's a lot of this, we're just starting to see the effects of it.
yeah. All right, victory laps, boy. I didn't get to see this game, but when I said before the season that Kennesaw State was not ready to play in FBS, my God. I think Middle Tennessee State has, if not the worst, I should know this, just about the worst defensive apex in all of FBS. So this is an opportunity for the Kennesaw State passing game just to stretch its legs, show what it can do on offense. And it threw up an apex of negative 36. Good job, guys. At least the backup, who I think is the coach's son, did not throw 2 picks in his 10 passes, while the starter threw 2 out of his 17 attempts en route to a robust 3 point yards per attempt. Just, I don't know. I got a little evangelical about the whole Kennesaw State is not ready, but I don't know. I'm putting myself in like in the 2024 preseason prediction Hall of Fame just for this call because I said this was my best play. And I don't know. The
How
turnaround will have to be something special for them to cover the 2.5.
yeah, how long until that wins? I don't think very long, right?
I
Weeks
think they're
away.
0-6 or 0-7. So, yeah, so 3 more games.
We're close. It's getting real late real fast. But no, I actually did see some of this game and it was not great. I think both teams were like actively trying to lose the game. It was like Middle Tennessee State, they didn't cover. This was the game where they didn't cover. I think they went 14-5, right? So they didn't cover the 10. But Middle Tennessee State really should have covered that. There's no reason why, but they just decided, no, we're just not going to score more points. Like you really could have, and you really should have covered and scored more points, but they just didn't for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, we're here with this now, and we have this result. So yeah, it's just they are not really good, and it's just it's not. They didn't they covered the spread, but marginally, and if Middle Tennessee State is just pretty bad, and I think if it was a better team, this would have been like 40 to whatever, like 40-5 or whatever.
They covered they did not cover the closing line of 8.5, but when we did our,
The pregame, yeah, the early
yeah,
line, yeah.
yeah, it was at 10. All right, my other one here is one thing I just felt strong about coming to the season is that Memphis is really overrated, and people just are not getting it. This is just not. It's not one of the better. I don't think I would put him in the top four of the American right now. Their defense absolutely sucks, just completely sucks. Seth Hennigan, he had good numbers against North Texas, but guess what? If you have a heartbeat, you have good numbers against North Texas. His apex is less than 100. This Look at the post game win expectancy here of 38%. They got, from a yardage standpoint, they got absolutely trounced. North Texas is a good offensive team, and it's kind of a rough look just in year two of North Texas being out of Conference USA, or out of crap. They weren't in the American. All right, I'm all confused. Stop. They have not been competitive for quite a while, and all of a sudden now they're this much better than you offensively. Just Memphis, it's not happening, guys. And I told you, they'll make a bowl. I heard, actually, it was Mandel's podcast today where he was saying Memphis is a, forget, he's using them as like a guidepost to judge some team. So Memphis is a good team. No, they're really not. They don't do anything good. So they got lucky on this one, but North Texas covered for us here.
Yeah, they did cover, and I think they definitely could have won this game. They were leading this game in many points, but they did cover it, so we're happy for that.
Yep. All right, your victory lap. You're going
Yeah,
American Patriotic here.
well, this is a combined victory lap, and like we've been pretty high on Army and Navy. Both of them won. Both of them covered. Army covering the early spread. They don't think they covered the closing spread, but you can very clearly see East Carolina Army took the foot off the gas there going into the fourth,
Yeah.
and let East Carolina score a bunch. It was really funny because I saw later in the day that East Carolina fired their coach, and I'm like, but why? They covered the spread. It's like,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, oh wait, that doesn't actually matter. The university's not basing it on you cover the spread, but both covered and both games went over. These teams are really fun. They're very powerful, very dynamic, and they're heading on a collision course in just a few weeks. And I think the winner is going to be going to the college football playoff. And I'm pretty excited for that. I don't know who they're going to play in the playoff, but I think it's going to be I think it could be really interesting. I really want to see this, and it was funny. I think it was like last year. It was Army Navy, and it was like the only college football game on like TV,
Mhm.
and I was like it was the one Saturday, and I was with my girlfriend now fiance, and I was like, oh, she's, oh, is there a football on today? I'm like, no, there's only one game, but I'm not going to subject you to that because it was Army Navy. I'm like, I want you to watch football again one day. We're not gonna watch this game, but if I'm like introducing someone to football, I'm like, yes, watch this game. This is gonna be a good game. It's gonna be a fun game. Watch this game, please. Watch this game. Think of how much this has changed from just a year ago when we were like,
Yeah.
Army Navy. Bet the under 32. They can score 30 points a quarter at this rate. That's maybe not exactly, but basically that's what we're looking at here. It's crazy.
Yeah. Not just changed, just to be clear, not to contradict you. Not just changed since last year, but basically changed since basically the end of World War II, to be
Yeah,
clear.
no, exactly. Yeah. These are I don't know what they did. I don't know what there needs to be like scientific study. They just be like, what has happened? Why is this completely different than it's been before? And yeah,
This was my, as I had the over in the Navy Charlotte game, which covered early in the third quarter. This is my first chance to see Charlotte, and I will just keep it at that for now. And I've got a gem on that later. There was just a real treat in that game. I'll just keep it at that for now. All right, overperformers and underperformers. Three overperformers for me. Kansas State just drubs West Virginia on the road. Their only loss is at BYU. Things are lining up really interestingly where that game, yeah, that game is a that's a that was that how do I say this? That game at BYU is a conference game because remember there were a couple of conference games that were not conference games, but that is one. So they have one Big 12 loss. This is really setting up. Don't know if you're familiar with the term Farmageddon, that season ender
yes.
against Iowa State. That's going to be, this is where it's really cool. That's going to be like a play into a play in game kind of thing, basically, to see since. I think that the other spot might be wrapped up. We'll get to that a little later. That could basically be the end of somebody's season right there versus playing on to play on, which will be really cool because those are two good teams and they're very different. Where Iowa State's very defensive oriented, Kansas State is very offensive oriented. Your guy fired Billy Napier with a capital FNP. Now 3-1 since he became fired Billy Napier. I hate to tell you this, Robert, but I don't have a problem with any of the losses. Their three losses are to teams that are ranked 6th, 7th, and 14th in the AP, who are combined 19-2. My goodness, I
Yeah.
Fire Billy Napier is on fire. Sorry for the pun there.
It,
He's become something here.
it's actually insane, right? He was fired. They're like, he's fired, and then he went 3-1 and lost. The only loss being to Tennessee, which just upset Alabama. So what? Now there's been obviously some changes since then. Graham Mertz went down with a season-ending injury, so now we're just full DJ Langway. But look at they tearing up Kentucky. Uh, this is a Kentucky team that took down Ole Miss, right? Or no, they took down someone, right? Yeah, they took down Ole Miss, right?
At Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's this season is crazy. And I think what people are going to say is that the argument people are going to make is that, oh, the SEC is so good. Every team in the SEC is so good. That's why all these games are competitive and anybody can win. And like possibly, but I think that means that obviously the SEC is definitely better than the Big 12 and the ACC, obviously. But when you start looking at the kind of non-conference, Cal beat Auburn. Florida lost, now a different Florida team, but they lost to Miami Hurricanes. Some of these non-conference games don't look particularly great for the SEC, and I think that the argument is more along the lines that like the SEC is down, and we talked about this a bit last year. I think the SEC is not nearly as good as people think the SEC actually is. I think the Big Ten is a superior conference. I think the top of the Big Ten is better than the top of the SEC. And you can make arguments as to the middle of the SEC is better than the middle of the Big Ten, and actually I could agree with that. But I think the top of the Big Ten is a bit above the top of the SEC.
I think so. Last one here. I've got to give due where it's credit where it's due. And Marshall has figured things out. Charles Huff is saving his job. I talked about he found a quarterback, and now look at this. They were against an outman. I think they played Georgia State. But geez, running for over 300 yards at over 8 yards per attempt. That's serious. And you've got your quarterback in there, Braylon Braxton, running for 70. So I think Marshall might actually have something here. Glad I did not play them under the season win total, but congratulations. It took a long time, but you finally found an offense. I guess it only took about 5 quarterbacks for you to figure out, find one that actually can throw the ball forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're overperformer.
Yeah, I'm going to go with LSU here, right? I think a lot of people wrote them off after they lost to USC. And again, that loss to USC does look a little worse each week, but they've been on a tear here, right? They beat Ole Miss last week. They probably shouldn't have beaten Ole Miss, but they did beat Ole Miss. Now beating an Arkansas team that did take down Tennessee. This LSU team is sneakily becoming one of the better teams in the. I think they obviously they have a pretty tough schedule. They still have to play Bama, and I think they're playing. Do they play Texas? They play in like at least 2 more good SEC teams. But this LSU team is actually not bad. A lot of people were writing off Brian Kelly. They're writing that Brian Kelly obituary, and maybe they need to put that back in the back shelf there for a bit. He seems to be doing. He seems to have figured out something here, and we might be talking more about. We might be seeing Brian Kelly in December in the playoff.
Yeah, they play number 14 Texas A&M this week. Then they're hosting Alabama. Um, and then they're at fired Billy Napier, which can be tricky. Then they host number 25 Vanderbilt. Interestingly, they end the season hosting Oklahoma. That's an interesting matchup. That's weird. That might be, I don't know. You might just be getting a zombie version of Oklahoma at that time and not like the real thing.
Yeah.
All right. I've got a more than one underperformer here. Florida State just I they find a way to lose by a touchdown when you give up 180 yards. Malik Murphy has an apex of -2, and it never really seemed that Florida State was really a threat to win that one. Even when it was tied, it just seemed, yeah, they're going to find a way to not win this, and they did it. I just doing it to a team that has 180 total yards. It was just I don't know. It's a new level of my God. How can we lose this one?
This game was really weird. Duke took this massive early lead, and I'm like, oh, all right, we were right. This game's going to end real quick. But then Duke just stopped scoring, and then Florida State came back. Duke scored another touchdown, and then apparently that put it out of reach. But yeah, no, like 180 yards, like that passing is just horrendous. That they got nothing through the air at all. And I think Florida State's now on their third quarterback now. I don't even know. They're not. DJU has been sat.
Then they've
It
gone to Croman and Brock Glenn, and
yeah,
I just
it's just keep going down the list there, and it's so iffy. I don't understand. I think a lot of people thought Florida State was really good last year because they were 13-0, and that's fair. That's not a necessarily wrong assumption to make, but there was a lot of one score wins in there, and I think when we talk about football, especially in the NFL, and you're like, oh, you had a bunch of one score wins, those generally tend to mean revert over time. I think we're now just seeing that and it comically reverting harshly. It's like, yeah, you won a bunch of these games, but now you're going to lose those games. And I don't know. I know some people are starting ever so slightly starting to call for Norvell's head. I don't think we're going to get there quite yet. I could
no.
be wrong though. He's definitely going to survive this year and probably into next year. But outside of that, man, I don't know. I don't know.
I Norvell just got extended um, after Saban retired and Alabama was making a run at him. So
Yes.
I think he's safe for a while here. My other underperformer, I didn't see this game, and boy, what a shame. I don't think I've ever seen a game where three different quarterbacks have thrown an interception for the same team, including one guy twice in only 6 attempts at that. And on the theme of -2 apex, hey, FIU, you did it against a pretty bad UTEP defense as well. I This is probably played when I was flying back from Japan, but boy, it looks like I missed a great one here.
Real shocker they weren't playing this on the airplane, the in-flight entertainment. But yeah, I don't know what ESPN this was on. Like ESPN 6 or something. I did get it somehow, but yeah, no, it's yeah, really low number there. Again, 4 interceptions among 3 quarterback. One guy he completed all his passes, but 2 of them were the other teams. Yeah, that was some of these midweek games are just hilarious. It's just this is they're fun, so they're fun to watch, but like oh, this team's just actively trying to lose this game, and it's yeah,
Yeah, mission accomplished.
yeah.
All right. You're underperformer here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Utah yet again. So Utah has officially sidelined Cam Rising. I guess he.
What?
I know.
Who
Yes.
saw that coming?
Yeah, I know. I guess he is. He's officially sidelined due to medical, which is great because we've said that for weeks now, and I don't understand how he keeps getting injured or why, but whatever. It's done now, and it's oh okay now because people were like, oh, you have to bench Cam Rising. He's doing horribly. Okay, and you know what? Your defense held TCU to 13 points, and to be fair, if you told me okay, TCU is going to score 13 points against Utah, I'd be like, oh, okay, Utah won. They won like 21 or 28 to 13, 100%. TCU's defense is horrible. You put up 7. You put up 68 yards on the ground against a definitely not physical team and you put up 200 passing yards against a definitely very enabling passing defense. I've seen people put up 400 yards against TCU. The best you could do is 200 in 33 attempts, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. This is really bad. This is horrible. If this is the best you could do against TCU at home, like they're coming into the mountain on elevation and you're like, yeah, we can only score 200 yards against one of the probably worst defenses in the Big 12. Okay, that's concerning.
Yeah. It- you buried the lead here, though. What's going to be great is after you're married and you have a kid and your kid is in college and you're going to say to your kid, let me tell you about a quarterback that used to play at Utah. His name is Cam Rising. And your kid will say, Dad, he still plays at Utah.
He could be. I don't. I'm assuming that at some point there's like a limit to medical eligibility when it's like you're 40, get out of here. I'd assume there's
Yeah.
something sort of clause like that, but I guess if he just keeps getting degrees, he's just gonna get all of them. Like he's like, all right, we've got like economics degree, we're gonna go business school, then medical school. That's next. We're gonna keep doing medical school, and eventually he's just gonna graduate and move into medical practice. It's gonna be great.
That's, yeah, exactly. It'll be, yeah, said. All right. Things that annoyed Robert.
Yeah, so we've got two things here. So the first one, and this one is extremely relevant right now. Because of the ACC got rid of divisions this year, as did the Big Ten. So they moved to now, oh, the top two teams are going to play off for the championship game. Great. That sounds great. And we could be having the same discussion about the SEC, but the SEC has decided to cannibalize itself. So we're not having that conversation today. But we are going to about the ACC and the Big Ten. In the ACC, there are 4 undefeated teams, and the Big Ten, there's 3 undefeated teams. Now, of those 4 undefeated teams, Clemson plays Pitt, and SMU plays Pitt, and Pitt obviously plays Clemson and SMU. But if Clemson and Miami and SMU all go undefeated, there are 3 undefeated teams at the top of the ACC. In the Big Ten, Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State, they are all undefeated. If all 3 of them go undefeated, they are all undefeated. They don't play each other at all. And we're now getting to a point now because of the way this is structured that you are now actively incentivizing one of these teams to lose a game down the stretch. Because if, let's say, for example, you're Indiana and you're Signetti and you're a genius and you realize, okay, if I win this game, then there's a chance that I could go on to the Big Ten championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I lose this game, I don't. And I get a bye. I don't have to play the championship game. But if I play the championship game and I lose the championship game, then I have to play the next game anyway. So you could basically say, I'm going to lose this game. I'm going to take the next week, the championship game week as a bye, and then go on to the college football playoff. And the problem is there's a lot of issues with this because one, you're basically going to be picking it at random. Yes, I get there's established tiebreakers. I'm sure they completely make sense and are not in no way arbitrary. But you're now going to tiebreakers, which are probably like points or strength of schedule or something that's not particularly in each of these teams' control to decide who's going to go on to the Big Ten championship game. And at that point, then there's incentive to not go. There's incentive to say, okay, I'm going to throw it so I don't go. So then I just go on to the college football playoff instead. Because again, you can control that you have a bye. Because if you go to the championship game, if you lose it, then you're going to have to play. I think it's like a couple weeks later, but you have to play that next game. But if you win, you get the bye. So you're actually incentivized to lose. You're creating a perverse incentive
Mm-hmm.
here. And they never really realized this. And this is actually, hilariously enough, this is actually the bad schools in the Big Ten and the SEC and the ACC's fault because they're like, we should have a 9-game conference schedule. And they're like, but no, we don't want that. We want to only have an 8-game conference schedule because then we want to schedule 4 non-conference teams that are easy so we can help our bowl eligibility. Now you're stuck with this, where a bunch of fans are going to be either upset that their undefeated team didn't go to the championship game because of some obscure tiebreaker, which from this I'm assuming is points for, which is dumb because that's functionally completely determined by strength of schedule. So if you played better defenses, you're just going to have less points. Good job. And then, or alternatively, you're going to have a team that just throws their final game. If they go 11-0, they're just going to say, all right, I'm going to throw this game because then I don't have to play the championship game, so I can rest up and then play a couple weeks later. I'm going to get like a double bye. Good job, guys. This is really good. This is really smart that no one thought that Indiana and Oregon and Penn State could be undefeated. Maybe they're like, oh, that 3-pair won't happen. But you should design this so that no matter what 3 pairs they are, that it won't be a problem. But like Clemson, Miami, and SMU, you definitely could have seen that one coming. That's definitely one of the ones that could have been like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that one could happen. But again, are we now basing the entire schedule on I think this team sucks, so it's fine? That's a horrible decision making process here. And again, this is just on undefeateds. If you go down to 1 loss, this gets even more complicated. This
Yeah.
gets even
Yeah.
more complicated and even more concerning. And then that gets to a point where you have to win and then you just hope you don't go to the championship game. Or maybe you try to
Yeah.
decline the championship. This is chaos now. And
Decline. I didn't know that's an option.
I don't even know if
You
it
can.
is, but if you can,
No, it's not.
could you forfeit? Could you just say, all right, we're not going?
That'll make you popular with the playoff committee, I'm sure.
What are they going to
Um,
do? You're undefeated. Or at that point, if you forfeit, you have 1 loss. What are they going to do? Ban you because you forfeited the championship game?
I tell you what, I was going to say good luck selling that, but that would make an awesome storyline. We're almost becoming like professional wrestling at this point, where it's
but
just
like we talk about the theoretical in terms of rest, but what if your starting quarterback's hurt? Right?
yeah,
What if you're Oregon and Dylan Gabriel's hurt, or he has let's say he's playing the game the week before things like there'll be a Thanksgiving week because the championship's the week after Thanksgiving. Dylan Gabriel gets a concussion in that game beforehand, so he's not cleared to play in the Pac-12. Sorry, Rest in peace, Pac-12. The Big Ten championship game. You could just say, all right, we can't win this game because our backup is probably not as good as Dylan Gabriel, and we're going up against either Indiana or Penn State. I'm just going to rest everybody. I'm not going to risk injuring my offensive line, my wide receivers, I'm not going to risk injuring any of them. We are going to decline the game, and we'll be undefeated, or we'll have the loss of the championship game, and then I'll take it as a bye, and then we'll play 2 weeks later. Because if we're going to lose anyway, why am I going to risk injuring my offensive line, my wide receivers, my any of the important skill position players? Why am I going to risk injuring those when I could just not do that and play a game I know I'm going to have to play in 3 weeks anyway?
I want to be in the boardroom when you propose that to a school. I want to see the reaction to that.
Some
That's
of the
awesome.
coaches would be like, "That's actually genius."
Yeah. On the topic of related to this, before we move on to your other thing that annoyed you, there's a scenario it's pretty. I don't say. I'll say it's not unlikely. Indiana's remaining games: hosting Washington, at Michigan State, hosting Michigan, at Ohio State, and hosting Purdue. Indiana could very well be looking at 11 wins, assuming that they're going to beat Purdue. Sorry, Isaiah. I'm pretty comfortable with that one. So let's just count that as a W. They could be looking at basically an 11-win season plus whatever happens against Ohio State. If I'm Ohio State and basically if the top of the conference looks like this, and I'm doing the calculus and saying, am I really going to be a 4-bid conference? Ohio State is going to they're going to be in life and death mode in that game, right?
Yeah,
If this is Even if Indiana is losing one game, if Indiana does something stupid before that, they can get back ahead against Ohio State with a head-to-head win. That is going to be a bonkers game. And Ohio State has that just the week before they play Michigan, too. I don't know if you know this, Robert. It's been a while since Ohio State's beaten Michigan. So that's a couple of crazy weeks. Just, man, the scenarios here, you just really hope it holds up, too. There could just be some insane games in later November here. Back to your point, though, I do agree 100%. I do think that the tiebreaker usually before you get too long among since these guys don't play each other, I think before too long it gets to who it goes to the college football rankings, which
yeah,
I
are
don't know.
great and are famously
Yeah,
infallible and never
they're
wrong.
never wrong. They're never wrong. I did a deeper dive on there, and they're the smartest 12 people I could have possibly put on that committee. Especially the guy who's the president of the Sugar Bowl, because God knows you are a football expert if you're the president of the Sugar Bowl.
One more quick point, and then we'll come to this next slide in a second.
Yes.
I think that people haven't quite realized it yet, but I think they've broken the conference championship game, and no one's realized it yet.
Yeah.
I think by creating
Yeah.
these super conferences and having the top two, it sounded great on paper, but they've actually accidentally broken conference championship games, and they're gonna have to fix it in a year or two. And
They
it
need to
might
just get rid of them. They just need to.
to
Yeah.
be fair, that actually might be where this is heading, and I think that we're probably getting very close to that. It's either you get rid of them or you have 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4. I'm not sure which one they'll pick. My guess is the one that gives them more ad revenue, which I think is 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4. But it's going to be one of those two, and I think they might just get rid of them.
If they were smart, and that's not the case because these people are dopes, but what they would do in lieu of a conference championship game for the Big Ten and the SEC, they would just make that where it would, because you're not going to forego that revenue. They would just make that a play-in game. They would just make it like 4 versus 5, just judgmentally saying, "Hey, here's the two bubble teams in the Big Ten. Here's the two bubble teams in the SEC. This is a play-in game." That
Yeah,
would rate so much better than a. It's nice to be a conference champion and all that, especially if you're Indiana. At the end of the day, how much does another conference championship matter to Ohio State? It doesn't.
this is where I think you're starting to see, and some of the talk. They said we're going to go through this format once, and then we're going to talk about it. I think we're now
Yeah,
seeing certain conferences are saying maybe there are some smart people who've thought of this, and they're saying we are going to give you the seats. You're not picking them. We're not getting some like backroom people in a hotel ballroom telling us what it is. We're telling you who our teams are going to be, and then if you do that, then you could say here's the playing game between 4 versus 5. That's what I
yeah,
think we're heading to. And because I think
that would be
yeah, because I think they're like we don't
spiteful.
trust the committee to give us always the 4 seats.
Yeah. All right. Your other thing that annoyed you.
Yeah,
What's the problem here? Come on.
yeah, there's no problem here. So if you're doing the rankings here, and you sit down and you're putting your teams, you're like, oh, Oregon won. I think Georgia is 2 now, and you're filling out your ranking sheet, and you're like, I guess Penn State's the 3rd overall team. You've done something wrong. You have to go back a little bit and be like, okay, something's wrong there. Because, okay, and you know what, Penn State, I'm not saying Penn State's not a good team. They're a perfectly fine team. They're a good team. But this is the thinnest possible resume I've ever seen for a 3rd place team. They two of their 6 wins are against MAC teams. One of them was only by 7 points. Their only win against a ranked team was Illinois. They beat them by 14, and they didn't cover the spread in that game. And their only other team, their most recent, they beat a horrible UCLA team, and then they also went to their other win was against a 4-loss USC team by 3 on the road. I think it was, oh no, not
In
overtime.
overtime.
Was it overtime? It was, yeah, I think it
Yeah, it
was
was.
overtime, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the number 3 team. I get it. You want to because of the way people like numbers, we can't rank a one-loss team above an undefeated team. But
Yeah.
screw it, you have to. There's no way you can reasonably say Penn State is better than Ohio State, better than Tennessee, better than even Texas, arguably. I get that
Yeah.
people are like, oh, they lost. We must drop them in the polls because they lost. No, those teams are still better than Penn
No.
State. You don't have to
No.
rank Penn State 3rd. You know better. You know they're not the 3rd ranked team. You don't have to just move teams up if they win. You can move teams down. It's insane to me that this is where we're at now, where it's just like they're the 3rd ranked teams. No, they're not the 3rd ranked team. This is insanity. You can't just be like they're undefeated, so they're number 3. That's nuts. This is how horrible things happen. Yeah, no, it's nuts that we're at this point now where it's like, well, I guess they're the 3rd ranked team. No, they're not. If you've come to this conclusion, you've done something wrong. Go back to the beginning and fix it.
Yeah. Pollsters just don't understand how to rank teams. Just unless you're from a G5 conference, then you need the shiny object flash right in front of your face for weeks and weeks for them to make your poll. Otherwise, they just take all your undefeateds and all your one teams. They're so dumb. They don't have the capability or horsepower or even curiosity to really rank like who has the best win here. Because to your point, Georgia's wins against Clemson and at Texas far outweigh anything on this resume right here by far. And I've been tough on Georgia because they've had some shaky games. What if you're looking at who's the best? I don't know how you line up Georgia's resume against Penn State's and Penn State comes out ahead. Yeah, just I don't know.
Or like
Pollsters stink.
Tennessee or whatever.
No,
Who is number 2? Is it Georgia 2? I think Georgia is 2. Yeah, Georgia's 2, but 4 is Penn State. 4 is Ohio State. There's no way you should be ranking Penn State ahead of Ohio State because one, they never beat them anyway. But also, okay, Ohio State lost to Oregon. Is that better than almost losing at USC?
yeah, but
Like,
Ohio. Yeah, I'd say that beating Illinois and USC are better wins than anything Ohio State has on their resume.
yeah, but they were very
Ohio,
competitive against the number 1 team though, right?
they were, but they didn't win, and it depends. I get your point, but if we're just ranking wins, I'd probably have to put Penn State ahead of them. But to your point, Tennessee, absolutely, Tennessee's best win is way above this.
Yeah.
So, all right, Narduzzi Award. I've got more than one here. We might at this point, since Narduzzi's been like shockingly quiet and competent and getting along fine with his nice offensive coordinator, at the point where we might have to consider renaming this award because there's some guy who really appears week after week. This is amazing because this is one of those win probability things that ESPN does, which is an absolute joke, but it's just fun to goof on. I don't know if you know what happened here, Robert. This is when Brady Cook hurt his ankle and left the stadium to get an MRI and then came back to the stadium and then came back into the game to win. Only our guy Hugh would. I mean, just you know what? It just you couldn't find like a Mac coach that could do that. They'd find a way just to pull out a win there. But Hugh, ever resourceful, finds a way to lose that one. I've never heard of that. QB goes offside, comes back, wins the game. Where it looked bleak for Missouri too, and Missouri's, as we've said several times, they're not the strongest team around.
It's crazy. I didn't even know you could like legally leave the stadium and then come back. I guess there's no law against it. It's like the Air Bud rules. There's nothing in the rule book that says you can't leave the stadium and then come back and play. It was funny. I wasn't watching this game. I was driving, but I was listening to College Football Blitz, and I knew that Auburn had a big lead at Missouri, and I was like, oh, you know what? maybe they're gonna maybe Auburn. Cause my model actually did Auburn in this game. I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe Auburn's gonna pull off the upset here, or at least cover the 5.5, because they were up like I think what 10 or 11 or something.
14 or third. They were up, yeah, it was
It
double
was
digits.
yeah, it was double digits, and I was listening to it, and it was like they college football blitz. It's like basically red zone for college football. They cut to this game, and it was at early in the fourth, and Missouri ran the ball in from the one. And I'm like, they're gonna win this game, aren't they? And sure enough, they did. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Is Missouri actually gonna win this game? And sure enough, they did. But it's just crazy that again we keep talking about this. This is not, and I'm not sure if we've quite won. Have we won the under
Yeah,
7? We won that. That's
this
right.
is it. This
Yeah,
is
that
their
was
fifth
it.
loss.
So again, it's I think we've won it, but it hasn't been scored yet because I think some books don't score it yet. So there's a big payoff
Yeah.
coming for me in a few weeks. But no, it's I don't know what this team is doing. It's so weird how, and again, they're not going to fire him because they're saying, oh, your recruit was so good. This recruiting cycle was so good. We're going to have a such better team next year. It's like, but you can't even do it with the team you have now. Like, how is a bunch of recruits going to help this? There's massive, huge coaching issues here. You shouldn't have lost to Cal. You probably shouldn't have lost this game. And there's a bunch of other games you shouldn't have lost either, but yet you have. Like, you shouldn't have lost the Auburn. You shouldn't have lost the Oklahoma game. We're now at okay. Here's 3 games you definitely shouldn't have lost, and yet they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's almost as if it wasn't a good idea to have Peyton Thorne as your starting quarterback. I don't know.
Questionable.
Yeah. This one hurts, but it just, after yet again we see USC snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here. I was so curious because every loss has the same script. They look great until basically the last two possessions where they absolute crap their pants and they find a way to lose these games they really shouldn't. So I segmented all their play into two buckets here. So they're 4 losses, all conference. Thank you very much. I just said, give me their performance in their last two possessions in those 4 losses. And then for the Penn State game, I threw in overtime as well. And I just said, give me their power rating in that situation. And then give me their power rating in all the rest of the game time this season. So in those last two possessions of their 4 losses, look at this. Their power rating is a negative 4.4. They might contend for, I don't know, 5th place in Conference USA with that level of play. Um, the rest of the time, though, 10.2. That's like a legitimate, like top 4, top 3 Big Ten team. I'm not going to try to guess why, because there's plenty of hysterics and imbeciles on social media who can give all kinds of theories on that. But just this change is so stark. This is just crazy. 14 points just in these 2 time segments right here. When you look at total, okay, whatever. The thing is, this is big defensive improvement over last year. They were like a -3. So you're looking at a 5-point improvement on defense from last year. My eyes have not deceived me. It's just, okay, in those last 2 minutes, it just becomes a different ballgame entirely for the defense. And the defense, the one thing I will say is clearly the defense gets worn out as the game goes on. As far as the offense, I have no idea. Yeah, this has not been a fun season for me. Especially, it would be if I could just, I don't know, blissfully turn off the TV with after 55 minutes of game time. This would be an awesome season for me. But unfortunately, the game goes 60 minutes long.
Yeah, it does, and it does sting with USC. I think they are still a good team, but I think maybe this wasn't their year. Maybe they need to do a bit more rebuilding, and they'll be better next year. Obviously, their quarterback will be a lot better next year, and I think he might be one of the Heisman favorites based off of where I think some of the quarterbacks will. Oh no, actually, not a lot of the quarterbacks will leave this year because Alamalea from Tennessee, he'll still be there. Um, Archie Manning will still be in Texas. Carson Beck will be gone from Georgia, but he'll be one of the Heisman contenders next year. And I think this is one of the ones where like you watch this and you could find some value spots on USC, but I think this is still I have them as one of the top 25 teams in my rating, which
Yeah.
doesn't really care that much about on-field wins losses. I think they're still one of the best teams in the country, and I think if you add in another whole year of getting better and improvement, this could be a team that could challenge for a championship game next year.
I wish I had your optimism. I'll just say that.
I
Now going back to that Navy game, this is my first time to see Charlotte, and I work from home. I get dressed up for the podcast, wearing a T-shirt. I'm just thinking if you're the CEO of a football program, you just might want to do a little better than what our guy Biff Poggi wears here. Have you seen this act? This is what he wears on the sideline. This is not a one off here. This is a lifestyle for the guy.
Yeah, you
This
gotta
is
love
in a game.
the rip shirt. You can just a shirt. You don't have. I get the whole like, oh, I'm so strong. My like just wear a regular shirt. It doesn't have to be ripped. It doesn't have to like you got into a fight with a raccoon. Just wear a regular normal shirt. It's fine. You can just people wear normal shirts. It's fine. This is like the Bill Belichick where he has like the absolutely destroyed shirt. It's like how many tens of millions of dollars are you making a year? Come on. Okay, he's clearly not making the same amount of money as Bill Belichick, but definitely enough to buy shirts. You could at least buy athletic wear. Go to the campus store. I'm sure they have a hoodie or something that you can wear, let alone this ripped shirt that just says shirt. Like he purposely ripped it, or he got into a fight with some sort of animal. I don't know. It's one of those two. And the fact that he couldn't find a better shirt is insane. So I don't know. It's crazy.
I'm pretty sure he gets comped his shirts. I'm curious if this is like on purpose. This collar being torn though. That's yeah. I don't know. This That was their first loss of conference play, though, to a good Navy team. So watch out for Charlotte somehow, he said, with surprise in his voice. All right, noted for future reference. Going back to what I said earlier about every team has, I see a case against them. Carson Beck's apex against Texas, negative 24. What the hell with this guy? If your defense was awesome, it's been pretty good this season for Georgia. Carson Beck has basically sucked this season. He's been like a couple of good games, but he's had some real bad games. I think I heard that he's had 8 picks in his last 4 games. I cannot see any value in Georgia to win the title. I cannot trust this guy to win basically 4 postseason games if you're counting the SEC championship game to win that and get the bye, and then 3 more. I can't see it. There's too many good defenses that he'll have to face in the postseason.
Yeah, it is concerning, right? That was I think Texas is one of the better defenses he's had to face all year. You've got fired Billy Napier coming up too, right? This is the thing. We're like, oh, like Georgia's the number 2 ranked team, and there we can make arguments for or against them being the number 2 ranked team that are in some ways there's better than the arguments for Penn State. But again, this has not been a particularly impressive Georgia team outside of beating up a Clemson team that's definitely improved since then. Like they lost badly to Alabama. They had a couple of bad quarters against Bama. They were able to handle business against Texas, but again, they're not really blowing out teams. And you even saw that a bit in that Clemson game. That they should have won that game by 50, and they just weren't able to score a lot in the first half. So yeah, it's a little interesting this Georgia team, and we'll have to see. Because again, if I'm not, I don't think Georgia is necessarily a lock for the playoff here, right? You have other games coming up. I don't necessarily like. You have Tennessee. You have fired Billy Napier, as we said before.
I think they have to
If
play Ole Miss. Don't they have to play Ole Miss still, or no?
yeah, like they're not a lock for the championship game. Actually, you know what? Let me check that. What is their odds to make the championship game? Because that might actually be some value there on or not make the playoff. And let me see here. To make the playoffs. Yes, no. What's Georgia plus 750 to miss? That's pretty good odds. I'd say that's pretty good odds to miss.
Yeah, they play at Ole Miss in 2 weeks. No, 3 weeks. God, and hosting Tennessee. Yeah, there's that Texas win. They really had to win that one. They really needed that one.
They needed that
So
one, but it's oh, we had to have this because if not,
yeah,
then it's okay. We're just doomed then. But
yeah.
interestingly, no odds on to make the playoffs for Indiana unless it's here. Oh no, okay, maybe it's here. Indiana plus 100 to make the playoffs. What an like if you had said
Yeah,
Indiana was going to be plus 100,
it's
that's
crazy.
that's crazy. But yeah, no,
Now, happened there though.
I really like the Georgia to miss because they could like there's a couple games in there they could lose a couple of games.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Mississippi State quietly. I think they have a quarterback now, Michael Van Buren. 84 apex isn't awesome, but he's a freshman, so he's not going to be just killing out of the gate. And against 2 good defenses, Georgia and A&M. So I think Mississippi State's. I'm starting to see some eventual proof of concept here on the offensive side of the ball. Virginia Tech wrote them off after their bad start. They're 2-1 in ACC play. They're like that weird end of the Miami game away from being undefeated and part of that whole stupid scenario that you talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
the logjam. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not
crazy.
in ACC play, but remember they did lose to Vanderbilt, and then they also they God, it's just how does Miami just keep pulling off these very narrow
Yeah,
wins? Miami is one of these ones where you're sitting here and I'm just getting ready for next year. Just bet them to make to like to under team total to not make the play. Like I'm getting ready. I'm just getting ready to because like I'm circling them, and the only reason they are even remotely competitive in these games is because Cam Ward is doing like insane things that are
yeah.
stupid and dangerous. Is going to get him killed on an NFL game, but like he can get away with because he's not playing against NFL level players. But like the second he is gone, and probably a couple of wide receivers there, this team is going to just get absolutely destroyed next season. It's not even going to be close. This team is going to, this is going to be, I'm just penciling in that massive regression for Miami. I'm just getting ready for it because we're going to get a juicy Miami to miss the playoff number for sure.
Is this because they're going to be in the Big Ten next season? I'm joking. Prepare yourself. Obviously, the big story about where the hell did this come from is Indiana, but BYU, undefeated BYU, I think they're going to be favored in their final 5 games. Get ready for 12-0 BYU, everybody.
Yeah, undefeated BYU versus undefeated Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and crazy fun though, pretty crazy fun. But yeah, it could be really interesting to see what happens there. I'm this BYU team is actually pretty good, and no one really saw them coming that way, but they're just pretty good.
Yeah. And just they make that's why that Farmageddon is really a play-in game because BYU is going to have every tiebreaker since they beat Kansas State as well. Interesting. I don't know what to make of UCF. By the way, they were awesome. We were all jazzed about their offense. Then they stunk. Then they play by far the best defense that they've played. A new quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown, and they run for 354 yards over 9 per carry against just a really good Iowa State defense. So I give up on them at this point. And yet, I think I have a play on or against them. Stay tuned in part 2 when we preview week 9.
Yeah. No, it's weird because UCF we were like this team is so good, and then they lost 2 straight weeks, and we're like, okay, this team is bad now. And now I didn't touch this game at all, but like now UCF is, oh, now we're a good running team again. We've decided this now. After you lost me money when I bet you heavily against Colorado, shout out to you for that, was great. Really happy about that.
All right. What a turnaround for Ricky White, UNLV's awesome receiver. Under Matthew Slick at quarterback, over 3 games. These are totals. This is not per game. Total 10 catches, 126 yards. 4 games with Haj Malik Williams at quarterback, 36 for 48. Much more like it. UNLV is just a completely different team. Just boy, this is a tough team now. Really tough team in UNLV.
It is, and they've got a really good game. We're going to talk about that is, I believe, Friday night. I think,
It
yeah,
is. Yep.
yes, it's going to be a really good game there on Friday night. Um, so yeah,
And shout out to my guy. I don't know how to say it. Revav UNLV fan who just latched on to me and said, "Hey, he saw how bullish I was about UNLV, so he asked me and explained the metrics to him. Held his hand through that white knuckler where UNLV won by 8, covering the 7.5 against Oregon State. If anybody has any questions about the metrics, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. Couple more G5 notes here. Troy, like I said, Jared Parker has absolutely just killed this program. Let's not forget, he was the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame last year. And now he 167 yards at a bad South Alabama defense. Really well done. That's UTEP FIU kind of territory there, Mr. Parker. Good job.
yeah, I was listening to this game. It was not particularly good for Troy. South Alabama could have scored a lot more, but they just decided, nah, we're not going to do that. But no, it was bad. It was really bad.
And finally, our guy, Lance Taylor, 3-0, Western Michigan and MAC play. I think they got overlooked because they had those. They actually played Wisconsin really tough for about 3 quarters, then they got crushed by Ohio State. Then they had that loss to Marshall, which I thought was the end of their season, but here we are, 3-0, and I think they've got I'm going to say it this way, the most promising coach in the MAC. So my little conversation piece on their over, I think it was 6.5 wins, that's still alive.
Yeah, I think so as well. They're a pretty good team. Again, we have to wait for action to figure out who's going to win the MAC. But yeah, it could be very interesting down the stretch.
They are alive and well in the MAC. So With that ends our week 8 review. Thank you, college football, for being an awesome sport. We love you when you consistently deliver. Catch us in part 2 where we preview week 9. Robert, I will talk to you then.
Yep. See everybody.